Well, good afternoon. I think we'll go ahead and get started because we're at 2 and people will be kind of trickling in and I think we're all just so much enjoying being back in person and seeing each other and having the opportunity to converse. So it's just really great to see you all and welcome you back to Celebrate Invention. I'm Kelly Sexton. I'm the Associate Vice President for Research and Innovation Partnerships. And it's really my pleasure to welcome you all here and to introduce this panel. Today, we're going to hear a panel on harnessing the power of Michigan to drive Ann Arbor's tech transformation. We've got a really cool lineup. They'll be introducing themselves shortly. But today is really about celebrating our community and our ecosystem of innovators. And it's a day for us to recognize the outstanding innovators that we're fortunate to have here at the University of Michigan and our incredible partners from the entrepreneurial and business communities. It's really this collaboration between the university and the business, the entrepreneurial, and the investment communities that really makes this such a special place and really makes our ecosystem so strong. The University of Michigan would not be such a leader for innovation, commercialization, and impact without the incredibly talented faculty and staff who are hard at work every day in the labs, pushing the boundaries of technology, and then working to move these new technologies to the marketplace. So each year, we gather, sometimes on Zoom, but today, fortunately, in person, to recognize those who are helping to propel our university and our community forward into the future with their research, their inventions, and their startups. So this was really the reasoning behind the creation of the University of Michigan's Distinguished University Innovator of the Year Award. It recognizes an outstanding faculty member who has worked to develop transformative ideas and bring them to the market. Later today, Professor Wei Lu will be formally receiving that award. So for now, just let me say that it's my great pleasure to introduce the 2022 Distinguished University Innovator of the Year, Wei Lu, Professor of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. Professor Lu is going to be giving us an overview, a distillation of a wonderful career's worth of research and commercialization. And then following that, we'll move to the panel discussion. So please give a warm welcome to Professor Wei Lu.
Thank you, Kelly, for the very nice introduction. Right, it's a great honor, right? It's to be among the distinguished speakers and guests, and really great university, right? I will explain, as Kelly said, I will give some very quick, very simple overview of what I've been doing and what I feel is really important, what's happening in the university and what we have done beyond the university. So I will wear my university professor hat first. I will give people a quiz. That's the quiz I gave to my students. So I told them something really important happened a few weeks ago. So the students immediately realized this. They said, it's a student loan forgiveness. They are really smart, right? But that's not the event I have in mind. It's really important, but that's not the event I have in mind. And I told them a lot of the tech executives are there, including our distinguished panelist, Rick Wallace, right, from KRA. Then some of them are smart enough, they realize this is the signing of the CHIPS Act, right? So everybody realized CHIPS is really, really important. In fact, we had the Detroit Auto Show a few weeks ago. We were at the governor's reception, and Governor Whitmore at the auto show kept saying the CHIPS Act. We are building fabs here. We are building places, R&D for semiconductors. And because everybody realized cars are increasingly becomes computers on wheels, right? The semiconductor is just so important. The chips are so important. So here I will just bore you with a few other numbers. This is actually some numbers I got at a few years ago at Semicon West 2015. So Semicon West is a trade show of all the semiconductor, particularly equipment vendors. So that 2015 was the 50th anniversary of Moore's Law. So 1965, Gordon Moore have this famous law, right? We have transistors doubling every 2 years, and which is really the driver of a lot of things we are seeing today. So this is actually some numbers shared at the Semicon, again, a few years ago, so the numbers are old. But the important number is that in 1973, Intel introduced the first microprocessor, the 4004. Right? If you look at the first processor with today's dollars, sells about 350. Back then, it sells for $60, so it's inflation, right? And it has about 2,000 transistors on it. Okay, it sells for $350. And in 2015, the Intel's processor was the i5, and it has a 1.3 billion transistors. So you increase the number of transistors by 500,000 times, right? So today it's more than 1 million times. And if you look at the price went down accordingly. 1,000 transistors used to cost $150, and at 2015, it cost 0.03 cents. Okay, 0.03 cents. Think about it for 1,000 transistors. So without the advances in semiconductors, if you want to buy a computer today, it will cost you more than $200 million, right? $200 million. And instead of a few $100, we can afford the iPhones, the computers we have today. This is all due to the advances in semiconductors. That's the reason no other industry has gone so fast as the semiconductor industry. And the one thing I keep saying is that the only thing the semiconductor folks know how to sell is better products at a much lower price. That's the only thing they know how to sell a product. That's not true in any other industry, right? And that's all due to the technology innovations in the semiconductor industry. But things are getting a little challenging, more challenging. Again, this is an engineering talk. I will not bore you through the numbers. But this is actually a slide given by a professor at Stanford, Mike Horowitz. So he keep emphasizing the effect is that not only the transistors are getting harder to make because we are making smaller and smaller devices, but also today's computing demands are different. Everybody is talking about AI, big data, so there's a lot of data to be processed. But if you take a look at the cost of processing the data, so if you just take a look at a computer running a simple operation, it turned out that the cost for running this operation is, say, less than 1 picojoule. But the total cost is, say, 70 to 100 picojoule. So more than 100 times cost is not due to the computing itself, it's due to loading the instructions and loading the data. That's when you have data on the chip. If you have data off the chip, that's another 100x more expensive. So you can make the transistors faster, but you are just improving the 0.01% of the cost. The 99.99% of the cost actually not due to the compute, not due to how fast you can make the transistors, it's actually due to how expensive you can read the data and how expensive it is to write the data. So it turned out that to make the computers better, the chips better, not only do we make the transistors better, the devices better, but also we actually have to think about how to make the data storage and data movement a lot cheaper. Otherwise, you are just trying to shrink this 0.1%, not 0.01%, not the rest of the cost. So in other words, we really need to rethink computing. So that's the kind of research we do since I joined Michigan in 2005. So we want to build better memories and using those better memories to do computing more efficiently. So the idea is that, again, previously, we can just make the devices better and everything will just become better. But now we have to think about things completely differently because computing is so much cheaper than data access. So we actually have to build chips around the data, around memory, rather than around logic. Okay, so we have to completely change the way we think about building the chips. All right. So we have been, over the last 17 years, we have been working on memory devices. These are the devices that store data, right? We want to build better memory devices so we can more efficiently store data. And then we can also want to build new architectures that can leverage these memory devices so we can more efficiently process data. Again, using this new approach towards computing. So this is actually the first startup we created back in 2010, and that's actually based on research we developed here. So again, you don't have to go into the details here, but it's a memory device. It's a new memory device So it can store data at a higher density, store more data on chip, and faster with faster and lower power access. Okay? So it already it got a bunch of funding, a bunch of people. It has products being sold in different industries already. So this company is called Crossbar, and it was founded in 2010. So after that, we shift gears so that instead of just building better memory, then we started thinking about how to build better computers around those memory devices. Okay. So that also we took inspiration from the applications. If you look at the applications, again, people are talking about artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence, you are trying to use neural networks. If you look at the neural networks, they don't have a separate processor and separate memory. You have those neural networks, you do computing inside the network, not outside at a central processor. So that's why it's very inefficient to use conventional processors like CPU to run those neural networks, because you are really trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, right? So then that's why GPUs are much better, because they have more memory, it's closer, so it's lower cost of data access and data movement. But still, it's not the structure of an actual neural network. So if you really want to make the neural network efficient in hardware, you really want to redesign your hardware just like the neural networks. So that's basically the approach we took, and we really completely redesigned the chip so that it's really designed around the memory, around the data, to reduce the data movement and to make that actually makes the whole chip a lot more efficient. Okay. So we have been studying this for about 10 years. Then a few years ago, we felt it's really neat. We seem like we have figured it out. We have students who are interested in doing startup, right? So that's when we founded the second startup called MemoryX, and it was founded in February 2019. This is actually the founding team. So that's me, that's my co-founder, Zeng Ya. He's also a professor at U of M in the ECE department. And these are our students and postdocs. So they joined the startup. They have been with the startup ever since. And Zeng Ya and Fan Xue actually went back to U of M to go back to start it for Fan Xue, and Zeng Ya went back because his leave ran out, right? But all the other guys stayed with the company. So there's a lot of up and downs, but they are always the team we count on to solve all the critical problems. That's the nice thing about Michigan, about the students at Michigan. They are extremely creative, extremely smart, but they are down to earth. They are fun. They are super dependable. They are loyal. They don't just jump ship to a better opportunity. They want to stay and really see the idea through. So that's why it's a really fortunate. It's a great team. So we founded the company in February 2019, and within a few months, we were able to tape out the chip and demonstrate this at the Consumer Electronics Show in a few months. That's the CES 2020. CES 2020. So for people in the semiconductor industry, you know, this is extremely fast. It takes years to develop a chip. So with a very small team, we were able to do that in a few months, and that's almost unheard of. And this is really due to the dedication of those folks. So we're obviously now into our third generation, and this is actually sampling to different customers. This is actually one example where we show we can use this chip to accelerate, again, for AI applications. In this case, a customer wants to build metaverse applications. So in the past, we want to have metaverse, right? You have to have folks wearing these special suits with all those dots and lasers in front of green screen. But now you can do that with a regular camera, just run AI algorithm. Okay? So they tried all the solutions, including their own, because it's a very large semiconductor company. And in the end, they decided to use this new architecture because that accelerates the performance by 30x and at a much lower power and cost. So we do feel the AI, especially AI at the edge, is going to take off. In fact, we are sampling chips with those different customers in all those industries, right? So there are people working with cameras, folks working in automotive, right? And metaverse we showed industrial. There's companies with forklifts. You want to quickly read, right? And in fact, they want to drive the forklifts, then switch the models. So to do the sorting of the products. Robots, right? Both industrial robots and household robots. And even in industry, in enterprise call centers. And there's actually a lot of applications we never heard of. But once we show these chips can do this, can run these algorithms very efficiently, we'll get all kinds of contexts. So that's what we hope for. We hope for to actually deploy those chips in all those applications at the edge and really make a difference. So that's all my very simple summary, right? So I would like to thank everyone in the audience and thank my students, everybody at Crossbar, everybody at Memoryx, right? My colleagues at ECE and the OVPR, Kelly's office. We really appreciate it and thank you for the work. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Wei, you did a phenomenal job of really distilling an incredible amount of research and innovation into a really accessible presentation. So thank you. You've greatly exceeded my request of you, and I'm appreciative. So I'd like now to invite the panelists to join the stage. And it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's panel, Mingyan Liu, the Peter and Evelyn Fuss Chair of Electrical and Computer Engineering at U of M. Fun fact, Mingyan is also the 2018 Distinguished University of the Year award winner. And so she's overseeing an incredibly innovative department within U of M and is an outstanding researcher, inventor, and startup founder. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Please join me in welcoming Mingyan and the panelists to the stage.
Thank you, Kelly, for the introduction. Let me invite all the panelists to please come. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Wei, for that fantastic presentation. So what we'll do is we will let every panelist briefly introduce themselves. I'll ask a few questions, then we'll open this up for questions from the audience. So Rick, I'll start with you.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And my background, very shortly, I grew up in Ohio. Don't hold it against me because I came to U of M and graduated doubly in 1982. Moved to California. I've been with KLA for 34 years, and I've been the CEO since 2006. I'm now very happily back in Ann Arbor much of the time because KLA's second headquarters is here, and I'll talk about that in a bit. It's great to be here.
Okay, yeah. I just talked earlier. For you guys too much. Yeah, I'm Wei Lu. I'm a professor at the ECE department, and for me and Dave as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Wensloff, and I did grow up in Michigan, in a little town called Beulah, which is near Traverse City, in the Pinky area. I did my undergrad at U of M. I'm a professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Division in the EECS department, College of Engineering. And I have 3 startups that I have co-founded over the years. So I have a pretty long-standing relationship with Kelly's team over the years. And my background or my area of research is in low-power radios. Looking forward to the panel.
All right.
So, I'm Eric Michielsen. I'm the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Engineering, which means that I work closely with Dean Gallimore on stewarding the research enterprise of the college. Over the weekend, I also report to Mingyan as a professor of electrical engineering and computer science, where my research is in electromagnetics. And so I have the great fortune to work with about 660 faculty members across the College of Engineering who do fantastic work and who contribute to our roughly $300 million annual research portfolio. And also have the great fortune to work with folks like Wei and Dave, who are serial entrepreneurs and do something for the college that is absolutely vital to our mission, which is create companies and translate their research into real applications that find applications in the community.
Thank you all for that introduction. So I'm going to start with Rick. As I don't know if many of you know, but KLA built their second headquarters in Ann Arbor a few years ago. Rick, I want you to comment on factors leading up to that decision and what's special about Ann Arbor, KLA, as well as how what is reflected in that decision in terms of the opportunities and long-term trends that that Ann Arbor has to offer and the state of Michigan has to offer.
Great. Just a little bit about KLA in order to answer that question. KLA makes semiconductor equipment, primarily inspection and measurement. So this is the equipment that's used in semiconductor fabs. We're based in California. We're about a $10 billion run rate company with about 15,000 employees. Most of our business, of course, is outside the US, which we'll talk about with the CHIPS Act. So the reason we had nothing in Michigan 4 years ago. We had 0 people. Today we have over 560 at this North Campus. We were very fortunate to work a deal with U of M to buy 18 acres and build a campus there. And we're very proud of that, and we've done remarkably well recruiting talent. The factors that led to it, there were kind of a couple. One, I knew socially Bob Stefanski, who runs eLab and was part of that effort, and I learned more about what was happening in Ann Arbor around a lot of the entrepreneurial activity. And I was intrigued because one of the challenges I always thought for Ann Arbor and for Michigan, except for the auto industry, how do you keep people here? Because, of course, there's many in Silicon Valley from U of M. So I had that, and there was kind of a confluence of things. That conversation, some time with Dean Gallimore, and then lastly, I was at an event where there were some scholarship students at U of M, and talking to them and realizing there was this opportunity here. If we build it, they would come in terms of, or they would stay. And that was the impetus of the idea. Particularly, it started in AI, because once people put AI on their LinkedIn in California, game on a few years ago. And so the question is, how could you build a center of excellence? For KLA, about 70% of our engineers are software or algo engineers, even though we make hardware. So that was the beginning, but then as we explored what was possible here, it expanded and it turned into other things. For example, supply chain management, HR, legal, finance, and it became the second headquarter because we could attract talent. About half of the people that are in our facility here are came from outside of the state of Michigan. So we had to attract people here. The other thing that I'll tell people is if you're hiring engineering, the Big Ten and the Midwest is a really good source of talent. And my joke is if you live in Champaign or Urbana, you go to school there, you don't think you're going to live there afterwards, you're ready to move. And Michigan, in particular, Ann Arbor, is a great attraction place for people. And it's not as hard to tell that story in the Midwest. It was a little harder in California. But we've had tremendous success in terms of recruiting people here. We've had a number of candidates who had options to live in California or live in Michigan recently, and they chose Michigan. So it's our fastest growing site. We've had tremendous success, and we're going to continue that expansion. I think the biggest attractor is really the quality of life and the University of Michigan. I mean, those are the two combinations, and obviously they interact with each other. So we're very proud of the decision we've made, and we're still hiring, so if anybody's interested, thank you.
Thank you for that response. And on that note, maybe I'll ask all of you here. You point to what's attractive about Ann Arbor, about Michigan. What else could this region do, or could the university do in terms of attracting startup investments, and in particular way, and Dave, you both have had startups here that moved elsewhere, but you also had them staying here. What else can this region do to create, keep?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, so yes, we have. So of the 3 startups that I've been involved in, one is completely in Ann Arbor still. The other 2 have offices in Ann Arbor, but have expanded into other areas too. And that's some of that is driven by talent, finding talent, but others is driven by just a desire, for people in the company to have an office in those sites. So what can we do to to keep our presence here. I agree with both things that you said. I think the quality of life is certainly a huge draw for Michigan, especially compared to Bay Area and big company life out in the Bay Area, because I have a number of my students who go out west and work at, I won't name any companies, but work at big companies. Some of them are in your pockets, the devices in your pockets, and they drive real hard. They drive their engineers real hard out there. So I think we have a much better work-life balance here in the Midwest, number one. And then number two, the talent pool from U of M. So all the startups that I'm familiar with, well, most of them that I'm familiar with were spun out of technology from the university. So I think that's a huge incubator for, technology-based startups in the area.
Yeah, I think Dave nailed it, right? So I have two startups. The first one, when we started, we got interest from VCs. The VCs insist you have to do it in California because they didn't expect we can do it in Michigan, right? So that's what we did. That was 2010. So the second one, Mavericks, I felt we have to do it here. And so everybody stayed here, and they love it. They didn't want to leave. Nobody, they all graduated from Michigan. Nobody wanted to leave. And they just love YearAward. It's a great place, right? So in fact, a lot of my former students, they told me if there are opportunities, they would have stayed. This opportunity didn't exist. I think the perception is very important, right? Once we have critical mass, the perception will change. So it becomes a really dynamic, vibrant technology hub. Then people start to see there's a lot of. The other thing is that if you just have one company, it's a little risky. So people want to see option, right? If somehow this company doesn't work, then what do I do, right? But if you have several similar companies, that would be a lot more attractive talent-wise to folks.
So this second company, when you decided to stay here, the VCs were okay with it this time?
Oh, the other thing that now we also have VCs based in Michigan. Right. It's also a big difference. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say we've always had those, but I'll double down on what you said about West Coast VCs asking companies to relocate. That happened with Psychic/Everactive too, and we said no, and we convinced them why we wanted to stay, and they agreed.
10 years ago, it was 12 years ago, it was a little harder.
It's very good to hear. Switching gear a little bit in terms of the technology space that we're in, where you obviously touched on new architecture around compute, memory. One of the biggest driver, of course, the application for your company is Edge AI. And your company has really stood out in, there's so many AI startups out there. Can you comment a bit on, give us an idea of what is the Edge AI? Where do you see that the field is headed? And
yeah. Definitely. I mean, first you have Edge AI already in the phones, right? If you watch any Apple commercial, Google commercial, they have AI like you can remove the people you don't want in your photo, you can remove it rather than just running the app. But there's a lot of other places you want AI, right? I showed some examples, right? So people in warehouses, they want to drive a forklift. They want safety because they can't see a lot of things. Then when they reach their, in fact, they are like one company in the logistics. They deal with these huge containers. They want to know what's inside the container and how do we manage that. So there's even one company working with customer support. So when you call customer support, right? So now they have cameras, or they can actually tell what the caller, what's the emotion of the caller. Is he or she happy or stressed? Or then the customer service agent can better respond. So it's a lot more objective than the other recipient being subjectively just based on her own or his own judgment. So there's a lot of application. Another example is robots. I really felt robots would be a big deal. That's why we have the Robotics Institute, right? There's industrial robots. There's also household robots. So for example, I have a sweeping robot at home, but it's not very smart. It gets entangled with wires all the time, right? You have to pick it up. But I mean, if you have cameras and it can really tell, then it will save you a lot of trouble. Then I don't have to mop the floor and whatnot, right? So this kind of thing. So I think household robots and a lot of the if the AI becomes really, really intelligent, it can really free us from a lot of the labor-intensive tasks. Right now, it frees us from, for example, computer-based tasks, a lot of those. But the labor-based tasks, it turned out to be much harder to replace. That's because the AI is smart. So people develop algorithms, but you really need efficient hardware, lower cost, lower energy, otherwise you won't be able to run the algorithm. So that's what we felt. This is a really, really important area, and there's no good solution. So right now they want to run, the algorithm, they have to use NVIDIA GPU that costs a few $100, consumes a few hundred watts. You can't put this in a sweeping robot. So I felt this is a really
Okay. Just to add to that, so this whole edge compute, it's low power computing at the edge, and the edge refers to Fitbits and Nest thermostats and robots and stuff like that, as opposed to the cloud, Google Drive, email servers, things like that. So this, I just want to tie this back to the Midwest. Another word for edge compute is the Internet of Things, if you've heard that term thrown around before. And kind of tongue-in-cheek, I heard from an investor once who said, the West Coast has the internet, but the Midwest has the things. And I think it's true. In a 3-county region in Detroit, there are literally thousands of factories making things, making the things that we buy in the grocery store, at Costco, at wherever. And those things could become smart, but they're only going to become smart with low power compute at the edge. So I think there's a good marriage of the companies that are building the things that we all use and the technology that can make those things smart.
Thank you. So pushing that further a little bit, all of us here have a background in electrical computer engineering. Obviously, AI is bleeding into all corners of our lives. And when you see 5, 10 years down the road, what are some of the trends in terms of innovation, commercialization coming out of the space of electrical computer engineering, computer science, and in particular, what other impacts? We talk about edge AI, Internet of Things, automations, things that we can, household work, and what are some of the other impact that you see coming that AI is going to make for all of you?
So perhaps I'll take a start here. So I firmly believe that electrical engineering and computer science have a very, very bright future. I have a son who just started college, and he's an electrical engineer, but I didn't have to convince him, really. If I were to start all over, I would, again, go into the same discipline. I wouldn't choose electromagnetics as my field of specialty, but I would, again, go into electrical engineering. By the way, I did graduate from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I survived that for about 15 years. To your point, it's much more comfortable living here in Ann Arbor.
Better late than never.
So I do agree with Wei and Dave that this integration of semiconductors in every aspect of our life and the shrinking of these devices and the fact that quantum is around the corner and the fact that this AI sauce lives on top of everything, that is just going to continue changing the world very, very quickly. I think we're just at the elbow in this exponential curve of innovation. And to Wei's point also, all this is going to require a lot of energy, but Minyan, you will hire all the fusion experts and solve that problem too, right? So I think from a technology perspective, I think everything looks rosy. When it comes to impact on our daily lives, I think we should think a little bit beyond the technology. I think that's where there are some harder questions for us to answer. Many of the things that Wei mentioned and that Dave works on do impact our daily lives. They make life easier, right? This robotic vacuum makes our life easier. And that's in the past what we have been focusing on, right? Things that make life easier, things that make us healthier, and so on. In the past, these new technologies have not really changed the fabric of our society, but that is changing a little bit, right? These wireless technologies, the internet, these communication devices, they make it possible for everyone to chime in on every topic very quickly. And then again, in doing so, they're kind of rewriting the DNA of our society. So I think that in electrical engineering and computer science, we're going to have to grapple with these topics too. Society is becoming very, very polarized. We're going to have to develop some meta technologies that drive again towards consensus and the like.
Maybe one other thought. Inside of KLA, we have a number of product divisions that make many different products, different cost structures. Almost every one of them has an AI effort going on in it. And it has to because, and historically it might have just been algorithms, but now, because if you don't do it, you're going to get left behind. And what that capability does is it extends the performance window for every one of the systems and makes it more affordable. So the need for AI expertise, I'd say two things. One, it's kind of ubiquitous. Every CEO I know gets asked that question by investors. What's your AI strategy? And what are you doing about it? And I think the other thing is that there need to be more platforms and tools because the ability for people to utilize it, for a long time, it was very complex and there were a few experts that could do it. In order for it to continue to become more ubiquitous, there need to be easier tools so that more and more people can use it and AI becomes part of what you do, not solely what you do. But it's already happened and it's already a large part. What we set up originally, the first idea in Ann Arbor was an AI Center of Excellence because we knew that a lot of the work that was done could be used across multiple divisions. That's a microcosm of what's happening inside of every company, and there are many companies that are way behind, and we can get to what opportunities are for U of M, but I think bridging that is how to leverage semiconductor technology and AI into multiple fields. Any player in anything making things, if they don't have an AI strategy, they're not going to win. It's pretty much that simple.
I just want to add, it's not my discipline, but that's my observation is that it will also help sustainability, right? So to make things more efficient, use less energy, but also developing new materials and new devices that, for example, can be energy devices that can more efficiently generate energy, but also just use less energy, make things more efficient. But also the other aspect is security. Again, I don't work in this field, but I know a lot of our colleagues work in this field. So there's a lot of concerns on privacy, on security, right? So there's a lot of research going on making this, making our communications more secure, the electronics we use more secure, the devices we use, even though we don't know who makes it, but we can take measures, we can develop techniques to make the overall system extremely secure and very private and preserve our privacy. So these are very, very important areas that I feel that the technology can also impact.
Thank you all. I'm now going to ask a question about the CHIPS Act, that was your first slide, the signing. And maybe this is more, and obviously it's a humongous bill. There has all kinds of things in it. So this is perhaps more for Eric and Rick. What is the impact on a company like KLA? And for Eric, what is the impact of legislation like CHIPS Act have on College of Engineering, our academic mission?
So this may not be obvious, but it actually has very little impact on KLA. It has a lot more impact on the United States. And the reason for that is because every equipment company out there sells wherever the market is and wherever they're building fabs. What the CHIPS Act does is it makes it more competitive to build in the US. That's really what it does, is it levels the playing field so that people can afford to build here because they're at a cost disadvantage without the incentives. So for KLA, our market share is the same pretty much in any region of the world, and 88% of our product right now is shipped out of the US. For the US, though, it's a big deal because I think the goal is to get back to 20 to 30% domestic capacity for advanced semiconductors. So I think that it changed the dynamic about where talent is going to be needed. And so from a US standpoint, it's much more important than it is from a semiconductor equipment company standpoint. There's also geopolitical implications, and many of you know that export controls have just been announced and are impacting the semiconductor industry. That's not unrelated to the CHIPS Act. That is part of the same strategy of reshoring a lot of this capacity. But I think it does create an opportunity and a challenge for institutions like U of M, particularly to train the workforce to support the onshoring of a lot of this capacity.
This is not a place and time to really dissect the CHIPS Act, but as Rick says, this is an incredible infusion of cash, right, this is an incredible infusion of cash into the semiconductor industry. It's about 52 billion. 40 billion is really meant to build new fabs in the country and onshore this manufacturing that we all had gone to Southeast Asia. About 12 billion in the CHIPS Act is really for research and development. That will fund a few things, a new effort in packaging, B, it will also fund this new National Semiconductor Technology Center that all will be coordinated by Commerce. And the university has a big role. Universities nationwide will have a big role to play in that center. As Rick says, we really will get to do two things. A, educate the workforce. If you look at the workforce needs of this industry going forward, it's tens and tens of thousands of people. There is no snowball chance in hell that we will educate the number of people needed to work in these fabs and to design that next generation of chips. But we're going to have to work very, very hard and innovate in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science to accelerate the time to a degree, to come up with innovative degrees that map very well onto the needs of industry and so on. On a research front, it's going to be very, very exciting. Our faculty even now are working very hard, teaming proactively with their colleagues around the nation as these calls for proposals are about to come out. And yeah, it's going to be the Wild West, but it's going to be very exciting. If I could restart my career, I would not do it in electromagnetics. I would be in semiconductors.
Thank you both. So maybe my last question before I open this up to the audiences for Dave and Wei. For somebody who is now contemplating, I have this technology I want to commercialize, and what might be your top couple of, one or two advice for them in thinking about starting a company in Ann Arbor?
Do it. Yeah, that's my number one and probably number two. Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? Starting. So yeah, take a risk and do it. It's a lot of fun. Probably my well, I was serious about that, but maybe a more serious one is networking. That's when I think back to when we started Everactive, and we, my co-founder and I decided that we were going to start the company, and then the very next thing that came out of our mouth was like, well, do you know how to do this? And then he's like, well, no, do you know how to do this? We don't know how to do this, and that's fine. You just go talk to people who do, because there's a lot of people who do, and there's a lot of people who have done it in this area, like, within 10 miles of where we're sitting here. So go find those people, go talk to those people. You will meet more people and build that network. It's a new network that you've never interacted with before, but it's a very valuable one.
And if it doesn't work, we're hiring.
So are we. Yeah.
Yes, we too. Yes. So I agree with Dave. Just give it a try, right? I mean, actually, I was reading one article somewhere, right? So if you are young, just fresh off college, right? I mean, there's really no risk. You try it, it doesn't work out, you work for Rick, right? They will be happy. You work on AI, you work on latest devices, they will be more than happy to grab the engineer. But even if you are older, like I actually read an article, they said that for the 40 or 50-year-old founder, their success rate is maybe even higher than the junior one. So it's never too late to start and try it.
Yeah, and just my first job in Silicon Valley was in a startup. And the benefit of that is tremendous because you get a broad set of responsibilities, and that causes you to learn at an accelerated rate. And so maybe it's successful, and that'd be great. But the other thing is there is a lot of learning associated with it. So I think it is really good time of your life to take a risk, right, is when you're just freshly graduated.
So as Associate Dean for Research in the college, I get to handle all the conflict of interest and conflict of commitment forms, right? And there are very few faculty these days that do not start a company. whereas say 20 years ago it was the exception, right? These days this is the norm. The vast majority of our assistant professors these days launch a company, if not two. It's very, very fascinating, and of course that's why I think 2 years ago we had 31 startups coming out of the University of Michigan.
Well,
one more thing. For all the students, I'll just put a plug in for the Center for Entrepreneurship. So take classes from the CFE. There's a lot of good classes there that'll get you ready for this.
thank you. Apparently we have everything figured out for you. Okay. So I'm going to now thank you all for those comments. I'm going to open this up now and take questions from the audience.
I just like to ask for more detail on the question of what additional education is needed. Because I just read the popular press, and it says, gee, all the chips are currently designed in the U.S. and they're fabbed overseas. And I just heard you say we have insufficient chip designers in the U.S. So I'd like a little more technical depth of the difference between what the popular press is saying and what you're saying.
So when you open up a new fab, and Rick can add here, it's true that the vast majority of people are not, or workers will not be needed at the bachelor's and master's and PhD level. So there are big efforts going on right now, for example, in Ohio, to start up new programs in community colleges, etc., to provide the apprentices and so on to work in these fabs. That said, we hear it all the time from companies that want to settle here in Michigan, that they're also in need of a large cohort of new bachelor's and master's degrees. So in that sense, in that spirit, electrical and computer engineering under Minyan's leadership is just launching now new masters of engineering degrees, very much tailored towards the needs of that industry.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think there are two issues. One, it is different manufacturing, but there is a lack. This is one of the challenges and why a lot of the talent or a lot of the fabs left the US. There is a lack of engineering talent to work in those fabs, not design. But the other one I would point to on design is the democratization of design through things like ARM and design tools has caused many companies to start designing their own semiconductors. One of the big changes a few years ago is when I first saw Amazon was designing leading edge chips. But the way they got them is they all acquired companies to do it. If you're an auto industry now and you're not starting to think about a semiconductor strategy and design, you're gonna get run over. And so, you know, Tesla's the only one out there right now that's doing their own designs. So I actually think there's a huge opportunity for training people to cross between industries that are already established and those that need semiconductor, because there's a dearth of that talent. And so I think there's both. I think the need is for both. And it's a great place. I mean, back to the making things, that is part of why KLA makes hardware. That is part of why we came here, is because this region makes things, not just software stacks, right?
Can I address the circuit part? So you also asked about circuit design. So I hadn't heard that, actually. I think the circuit design in the US is actually very healthy. I think where the chips are fabricated, yeah, could be over. I think TSMC does 2/3. They're based in Taiwan. They manufacture, I think, 2/3 of the world's chips, I believe. Yeah. So, but most of that, a lot of that design is in the US. So Google has a chip design team. Apple has a chip design team. Intel, obviously, Qualcomm, NVIDIA, Facebook or Meta, they are starting a chip design team. So you have these companies who are creating chip design teams to do things like compute at the edge, because now it's accessible for more companies to just start up their own chip design efforts. So my companies hire circuit designers, and it's a terrible time to be hiring circuit designers right now, because they're getting huge salary offers from these companies I just mentioned. So there's a shortage of IC talent. And then the one other thing I'll say is I'll put on my Michigan Integrated Circuits Lab director hat. And I think, so the MICL is a lab inside the ECE department, and I think MICL is the largest individual group, like Integrated Circuits gets the most graduate student applicants, right, of any other group in the department. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a massive group of students that we educate and then graduate and go out and work at these companies. And there's a huge pipeline there, huge flow of students coming through U of M. And U of M is recognized as one of the leaders in IC, integrated circuit programs.
That might actually be independent of the CHIPS Act. The dynamic that you all are describing is how.
Yeah, CHIPS Act wants to bring the manufacturing back to the U.S., but design has always been in the U.S.
Yeah, build on top of that, abstracted. Yep.
Thank you for that question.
So Rick, I think you're on the board of Memorex. Is that right?
Yes.
So you were kind of joking when it's like, well, if that startup doesn't work out, we're hiring.
No, that one's going to work out.
No, they try to hire our employees. We didn't know, but our employees.
But there's like some truth to it, right? The decision for KLA to move here, there were a lot of good reasons, but is it important when companies, like KLA are thinking about where to site? Is a critical mass of innovative new companies in that space, is that part of the mix that you're looking for as well?
It is because of the talent, attracting talent. I think the idea of somebody, especially younger in their career, going to a place where there's only one employer is concerning. And so what you want to have is an ecosystem so that they feel like they're not trapped. I'm also a big believer that companies behave better when there's a war for talent, right? It causes them to do the right thing with their people. So it is a good thing to have it, and I think, so I'm pretty active in trying to attract talent to, particularly to Ann Arbor, but also to Michigan because of that. I think it's good for the ecosystem and good for the health of a company like ours, for sure.
Thank you.
So the startup environment, from a money availability point of view, has been super, right, for a few years now, right? Interest rates are really low, the cost of VC is really low. That's changing now. And how do you see that impacting these kind of activities over the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, yeah.
Well, I have one, the whole Warren Buffett, when the tide goes out, right? I mean, right now, I think what will happen is the better companies will keep getting funded, and the ones that probably, there was so much money and so many things getting funded, there'll be a natural sorting. So in that sense, there'll be some challenge in getting funding for a while. A lot of these firms have raised money, and the issue is not do they have the money, is are they willing to write the checks, and where are the valuations? So there's going to be a down round of valuations that happen in order for the next rounds. But there is money available still right now. It's just a little harder to access it.
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I think last year there was a lot of so-called dumb money, so people just throw money at anybody does AI and whatnot, right? But as Rick said, there's a lot of companies that their technology is bogus, but you just make the claim, right? People will throw money at you, right? Those companies hopefully will be weeded out. So the people, the real solid people with real solid technology, hopefully will survive the storm and become stronger.
What we're seeing is a shift from a focus on growth to profitability, a path to profitability. So that's a signal that investors, they have money, they will write the checks, but they're being more conservative about where they're putting their bets.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. There.
So you've had a lot of experience with startups in this ecosystem. If the funding is going to dry up with that high-risk startup instead of the university, because they're more conservative, they're not at growth stage yet, companies are familiar with the very early stages. What do you think the best things they can do now, especially if they're located in Michigan, for the environment?
Want me to? Sorry about your leg, Mike. Yeah. I tore my Achilles too. It's rough. So I think what we heard is there is money. It's not drying up. It's just investors are being more conservative about where they're placing their bets, meaning they want to see a path to profitability. So You know, I think the most famous example of like hyper growth is Uber, where basically rides were subsidized by VC money in order to get people to move from taxis to take Ubers, right? And now the VCs are saying no more, you have to show profitability. And for anyone who's taken an Uber recently, you know the price went up, right? Well, that's because the VCs aren't subsidizing your ride anymore. So, but early on, it was growth, 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 right? They wanted to show growth. So now they are asking Uber to show profitability. And so I think that's the shift. It doesn't mean that high-risk things won't get funded. I think it just means you have to show that your high-risk thing can lead to profitability in a reasonable amount of time. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how long. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, it's hard to predict the economy, right? So yeah, I think it's really you have to play the long game, right? So be frugal. We have been really frugal from day one. Really be frugal and maybe cut back some of the spending and really try to survive this downturn.
So the matter of bringing and increasing the semiconductor business in the area, you've talked about critical mass. We need to reach this critical mass to bring up. What would be the ways to build that critical mass? What are the things that we need to do to create the critical mass in the
Well, we just have to keep on working together very hard to get all these companies here. I'll tell you that the college is working very, very closely together with Kelly's organization, with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Not a week goes by, or we're hosting potential candidates here, folks who want to put up a fab here, a design center, and so on. We just have to keep on working together and making sure that everyone knows about the benefits of coming here to Ann Arbor, as was pointed out before. We have this incredible university, we have this incredible talent pool here, and it's a fun place to live. So if we keep on at it, I think we will succeed. And I think more folks will follow in Rick's footsteps.
I think one other thing, KLA for years has designed in-house our own Master's of Systems Engineering program. You get a master's degree, and we partnered with universities to do that. But we had to design the curriculum because it didn't exist, right? So anything that the university can do to facilitate and attract industry in terms of programs, where it looks like the program, the graduates from that program will be a direct fit into that industry, that would be a big plus in terms of the ability to attract people. So I think with semiconductors, the increasing, I think you've got there's a lot to work with there.
Yeah, and on that note, we now have master's engineering programs specifically in microelectronics for that purpose. Well, thank you all very much for this wonderful panel discussion.
Yes, thank you all. That was a really wonderful discussion, and it makes me really excited about the future of Ann Arbor and of our region. And so we have a lot to celebrate, and so I invite you to stay with us. We're going to be opening the Rogel Ballroom just down the hall, where we'll be having a networking reception. There are going to be 6 kiosks on display with really great inventions and inventors and startup founders all out of the University of Michigan. So please join us, and let's give one more round of applause to this really outstanding group. Thank you.